provided awesome information. You read everyone's mind and you knew what what we were thinking.
Well,
So
really
with that,
crappy, Commissioner, but I hope it's really good.
you give a hell of an executive summary. So with that, oh, sorry, Commissioner Ponstein has a question.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Rich, thank you for all your hard work. It's definitely a difficult time, but I just wanted to re-point out something you said that, you know, as tragic as COVID-19 has been for some people, there are some benefits, and going forward, the stuff that we're going to be doing now is going to help us in the future, not just battle COVID, but a lot of different things. And while I've got you there, we can make venues as safe as possible. What is the feeling in the industry what's the feeling of people, even with safe things installed, whether they're going to go out? I know you mentioned the pent up demand. Is that something that's measurable, something that's real?
Thanks, Commissioner. And I think you're absolutely right. Doing these things also gives us a competitive advantage when we reopen, especially when we're talking about artists that are looking for places to tour, or meeting or convention planners that are comparing different markets. So provided we're able to implement these things and others, we're going to be a lot more competitive than we already were. Specific to your question about the industry, I'll answer in two different frames, if you don't mind. One relative to the live touring industry. So I'm talking about primarily arena and DeVos Performance Hall ticketed events on a earnings call. So Live Nation is North America's largest promoter. They're publicly traded. And on at least the last earnings call I was on, they do an earnings call quarterly. Michael Rapino, who's the president and CEO, I don't know if that's the correct title, but he's the chief poobah. He referenced that when people who bought tickets were offered a refund, 86% chose to keep their tickets. I think that's very significant. That demonstrates that people, once it's safe, will want to come back. They also referenced that folks who bought festival tickets, so a much higher price point and a multi-day commitment, chose to retain their tickets for the following year at about a 67% retention rate. So that then, coupled with the fact, while the buildings do not have events going on, we're very, very busy with our calendars. And we have a number of events, not only that are being relocated from when we're closed to when we hope to be open, but a number of artists looking to get back out. I've heard from a number of folks, not only from ASM at a corporate level, and one of our head offices is in LA, so it's very plugged in to the live entertainment scene, but also from agents, managers, and even artists. They want to go out. The artists have an artistic need, an artistic innate insistence to be able to go out and perform live. A number of artists are holding on to recorded music so that they can put it out later and support it by going out live. So there's been a number of the drive-in things and the streaming things. They are a very pale replacement for the live experience. So I think on the ticketed side, absolutely, undoubtedly, there is a significant pent-up demand that will provide, once we get past 21, I think, and into 22, we're looking at a really, really strong 5 or 6 years for live entertainment. Speaking to the meeting convention side, it's equally strong. After 9/11, there was a question about, will things come back? And then with the increase of technology, will meeting virtually replace the in-person experience? All indicators are from industry publications where they're asking not only meeting planners, but also meeting attendees, are you interested in going back? Are you interested in reattending? And the answers across the board are significantly high with a yes. So I really do feel comfortable and confident that the industries will come back. And then just one more, and I'm sorry to take too much time, but this is important. I believe Kent County as a market will even be better elevated, because I think the larger markets, the major markets, are going to see some retraction. And the smaller markets where there's a perception of more control, whether that's real or not, there's a perception of more control amongst the attendees and amongst the meeting planners and the promoters. And I think we're going to see that be a strong benefit, coupled with the fact a lot of our business at the convention center on a regional basis or a state basis is drive-in. So if there's any apprehension about flying, our drive-in business still will continue to be very strong. So I hope that answered your question, Commissioner. I'm really, really bullish on where we're headed once we get through this.
Thank you so much. Yes, it did. And you touched on other things I wanted to ask you later, so thank you.
I don't see any other hands, but Rich, I just had a quick question. Is this at both large venues, these safety?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So Van Andel and DeVos.
Correct. In the overall packet, the detail outlines exactly where these projects would be done, but this would cover the theater, the convention center, and the arena.
Wow. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Looks like Commissioner Skaggs has a question.
Yeah, just a quick one. I know we're in a hurry, Chair. So I just wanted to say that, since no one else had really said it, Rich, this is a really impressive proposal here. So I think that's probably why we're not asking any questions, because any question would have been answered by this. So just really appreciate all the work that you and your staff did. That is all.
Commissioner, I appreciate it. Our guys take their jobs very seriously, and there's a frustration level amongst us because we don't have people in our buildings. So anything we can do to get that happening quicker, we are very quick and thorough to try and make that happen.
And we are in 100% agreement and appreciative that we have these funds to make these venues safer for everyone. So thank you for this presentation today. I'll check chat one more time. With that, I don't see any other hands. So thank you, Rich, so much for taking the time. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for working around the clock to get to open safely. And with that, we will move on to item 4 of our agenda for today. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
Have a good one. All right, we're on to item 4, Health Department additional needs. I had asked Director London to join us today. I'm not sure if he was able to do that. Adam, are you on today? Dr. London?
He may just be joining. I see his name on here, but he's...
Okay, I'll call on the staff then. I know Steve and Jeff and Linda have been working on concerns and potential additional needs at the health department. I had talked to Dr. London earlier about potential needs for vaccination preparation if we do indeed get a vaccination, what that looks like, what those costs are going to be, how we're distributing that. Hope to hear.
He's on now, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
I think he's on right now. I think Adam is there.
Okay.
I am. Good morning, and I apologize for that. I had 10:30 on my calendar.
We're so excited to hear from you.
Sorry.
We bumped it up a little, so welcome, Dr. London. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. And I just quickly want to go over a little bit about where we stand now and kind of what we look at going forward. Since we received the $14 million award several months ago, we've put a number of things into place. And I also want to recognize Gail Brink, our finance director, who's on the call also, that if you have specific questions about where we stand with any particular budget item, she can give you those details. We have put the money that we received to good use, I believe, in creating testing sites at the Fuller site, the South Clinic site, the Baxter Clinic. We've also worked with partners to provide testing sites at the Hispanic Center and at Link Up down on the corner of Hall and Madison. We've purchased software called Patient Education Genius, working with our school systems to make contact tracing and health monitoring more effective and much easier for them. Facilities and staff and supplies for the effort to test and isolate individuals who are experiencing homelessness during the early phase of the epidemic. Studio improvements for communication. Communication, of course, has been our primary tool in this first phase without having many therapies or vaccines available. We've been bringing in lots of individuals on board as contact tracers and case investigators, getting better equipment for our laboratory, especially in anticipation of receiving more lab equipment for testing, and also the vaccine. So we have the storage capacity, the coolers, the refrigerators in place in advance of that. Partnering with the state on making sure there are isolation centers for agricultural workers. So there's been a lot going on, and we've been very thankful also that during the midst of this, we have received significant financial support from the state of Michigan. And in the last month or so, we've received over $5 million in support from the state of Michigan that has helped to offset and to expand many of the things that we were doing originally. Now, having that in mind, we are asking for an additional $2 million at this time, which is going to help us through the last phase of this year to do some heavy lifting, including making testing available, readily accessible testing at our schools for our students, for the staff, for the families of those students. This has been made possible by some technology that has developed in the past few months, including the saliva test and the Nares test, which is a swab of just the upper sinus instead of all the way back into the nasal pharyngeal area. Much easier for parents to do themselves of their children. That's going to be a heavy lift and expensive, but we think it's really important for identifying cases early, isolating them, and keeping our schools operating in person. We have a pilot that's underway at this time in partnership with Godfrey Lee. We'd like to expand that in the coming weeks to other schools across the county and really make sure that it's up and running and well functioning by the time GRPS opens in person in early November. We're looking at adding some testing locations outside of the inner city. And we've done a great job of making testing available at locations in the Grand Rapids area, especially on the south side of town, in neighborhood accessible locations. But looking at that now, we'd like to make sure we have testing available in some outer areas. And in particular, we're looking at the north side of Grand Rapids or up the either the Alpine or the 131 corridor, making a site available in that area. We're looking at acquiring a second mobile unit, which is going to be important for us. We've already planned on one mobile unit. We'd like to acquire a second mobile unit, which will allow us to do testing and vaccination at locations throughout the county come the early part of 21. We're looking at a large media buy, especially after the election when airtime becomes much more affordable. It's going to be really important for us because we're already seeing that about a third of the population is reluctant, no matter what happens, to get the vaccine when it becomes available. We need to have about 2/3 of the population willing to get vaccinated in order to get to herd immunity. About a third of the population says they're in, and about a third of the population says they're undecided. And we need to work on building confidence with that middle third in order to make sure that we can get to herd immunity as quickly as possible so we can get on to the next phase of this. We're looking at expanding and extending a contract we've had in place with Tri-West, which is a consultant who's been working with us to do the mental health crisis system improvements. That was a project that we had hoped to have done by midsummer, but because of the pandemic, it's been just delayed for a number of reasons. And it's really important that as we bring in an administrator, and this is a position that's funded by our healthcare partners in partnership with the county and others, as we bring that position on, it's important that we have the consultants on contract for at least 3 months in order to bring that person up to speed and be an assistant to them. This is a problem, mental health crises, which have also been exacerbated by the pandemic. We know that anxiety, depression, all of our partners in the mental health provider arenas are telling us that they're seeing an increase in calls and demands for service. So we need to make sure that we get that system improved and up and running as soon as possible. So getting that support for Tri-West is important. And then phasing out of testing. This is really the long-term goal for us, is to gradually step out of testing bringing in others to do contract testing for the county so that we can move into the vaccine space and more of the clinical space so we can get back to doing vaccines for other things at full speed, along with things like lead testing. So it's very important that we can bring in more providers to do testing. And having a very intentional plan to get this vaccine plan to be a community plan and not just something that was thrust upon the community by government. And so we have a plan in place to engage stakeholders throughout the community to get their feedback so that we can minimize any mistrust that there is of the plan, and making sure that that people understand when it's time for vaccination, how that's going to be accomplished, where, and so we can enlist them as stakeholders. So we think, in addition to the resources that we currently have, and in recognition of the $5 million approximately that we received from the state, the additional $2 million is needed to accomplish these things.
Sounds like you'll be busy.
Yeah, we are. Lots of partners are very busy too.
We are so lucky to have you and the staff. Awesome. I mean, I'm just so proud every day to have our Kent County Health Department staff. Questions, comments for Dr. London? I know some of our committee members did have some questions for him. Looks like Commissioner Breeby.
Yeah, thank you for the plan and the presentation, Adam. I think, it definitely hits a lot of important points. One of the things you said was increasing testing and increasing locations. I like the idea of schools being able to test. But I'm wondering what type of capacity our labs have. I know it takes a couple days right now to get test results back. But do we have any capacity, in terms of like rapid testing available? And getting results back in a day or even 15 minutes. What sort of capacity do we have?
Yeah, so it depends on what you mean by rapid. The true rapid test by Abbott Technology, we have had access to that. However, it only allows one test to be run at a time, and so for the sort of public health screening that we do, it just hasn't been very practical. What we're looking at now is the saliva test, which can be turned around within 24 hours. And Arctic Laboratories is a local laboratory that's doing this. They are now up to over 1,000 tests per day that they can run that way. And we're also looking at the Nares test that I mentioned before. And NextGen is offering that as well. And they're at about 36 hours turnaround time right now. Where we're seeing a challenge with turnaround time are some of the other pharmacies that are using laboratories that are not local. And so that transport time is adding some delays to some laboratories. But at this time, our labs have expanded their capacity locally, and we're feeling pretty good that we can get test results back within 36 to 48 hours.
All right. Commissioner Stack.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Good morning, Adam, and thank you for your explanation on all this, and especially thank you for putting the additional consulting with Tri-West into this mix. I think that's a critical part, as you noted. We're going into a time when the tail of behavioral health concerns arising out of COVID are just now beginning to be understood, and so that's going to have more and more reality to it going forward. So I'm wondering, do you anticipate any more reassessments? Obviously, there's a lot of variables in what the world you're dealing with, and we don't know precisely how things are going to evolve in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Are you scheduling, would you intend to take another look at these needs before the end of our funding year, which is in December?
Yeah, so the budgeting that we have done to consider, a high demand. It is possible that we may come in less than that. Of course, it's, anything is possible, as we all know, but we feel pretty confident, and Gail can speak to this as well. We feel pretty confident that the number we have now and the resources that we've been getting from the state, and we also suspect that more resources actually may be coming from the state, that we have what's sufficient for the rest of this calendar year.
Yeah, I think all of our experience with modeling in the COVID world has been less than ideal. So certainly would encourage you to continue to stay focused. I'm not so concerned whether you're overestimating as you may be underestimating what the future may require of us.
Is it all, Commissioner Steck? Commissioner Skaggs?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Adam, for that update. Can you just give us because I don't believe we have anything in writing. I didn't see it in the packet. Can you just give us a sort of broad overview of what we're getting for the $2 million? I know we talked about testing. We talked about a second mobile unit, but I just want to be able to wrap my arms around these, what we're getting for these needs, and especially what we're getting that might be, get us into 2021 and beyond.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And the second mobile unit is included in that $2 million. That's a couple $100,000. We're looking at a media buy of, I think, Gail, correct me, I think it's $500,000 included in that.
That's correct.
Okay. And we have some testing locations that we're adding, which are probably at least $500,000. Is that also correct, Gail?
That is, yeah. Very close to it. It might be a little more than that even, maybe closer to, 600,000-700,000.
We have the extension of the Tri-West for the mental health crisis system, which is about 100,000. And then we have a number of infrastructure projects that we're working on within our clinic and in our annex to make sure that, in our laboratory, to make sure that we have those in place for receiving the vaccine.
Commissioner Skaggs, any follow-up?
Yes. So we would have everything we think we would need to prepare to have a vaccine move, at least in part, through the health department. So I know we were talking about, storage of a vaccine that might be, need to be, in a deep freeze or at least in a refrigerator. We would have everything that we possibly could need, not knowing exactly what type of vaccine we're going to end up with, but to get us moving forward into the future.
Yes, we feel very comfortable about that. If we have a concern, it's going to be the staffing that is going to be required. I'm assuming that sometime in early 21, after the eligibility of these funds go away, that we're going to have a vaccine on hand, and we're going to want to mobilize that, certainly in partnership with all of our other providers, but we're going to want to increase our efforts as well locally with the health department to make vaccine available. And without having the ability at that time to bring in temporaries and others to help with vaccine distribution, that's going to be a challenge for us. But that's outside of the boundaries of what the CARES Act will allow us to do right now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, Chair.
Commissioner Talon?
Thank you, Chair Bolter. And I'll add my thanks, Adam, for all the great work from your department and from you. I took note of your citing of the documented increases in cases of anxiety and depression in our community, and recognize that we, particularly in the city of Grand Rapids, are experiencing a secondary public health epidemic in the area of gun violence. And I wanted to ask whether that was something that you considered or are considering as a significant public health issue, and whether you considered requesting some funding for that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And we do certainly consider violence a public health priority. The community health needs assessments for the past several cycles have said that that's a priority for the community. And it's one of the driving reasons behind the purpose of the Population Health Consortium, this partnership between the county and the hospital systems. And one of the factors that's driving the demand and need for the crisis center and those system improvements, which include mobile crisis support teams. So we have 4 priorities that the consensus work group from that project have identified, including crisis centers, including mobile crisis units, including a call center for 24/7 call center for crises, and making sure that that no one is turned away for ability or inability to pay. And so we think that the literature supports this approach being important and evidence-based for addressing the precursors to violence. And so it's going to be very important that we see that through. And that's where that consulting with Tri-West is important, to make sure that they can stick on for at least another 3 months to help that system and the administrator we'd like to bring on for that system to get their legs beneath them and start making progress on some of these efforts. And we have started to look at actual facilities and models and all kinds of resources. So there is being significant progress being made there. And as you probably know, Wayman and Mike Janinoa, along with the CEOs of the 5 healthcare systems here in town, in addition to Hope Network and Forest View and Network 180, are all part of that leadership team. So I think that violence is a major public health issue, and we've seen how I believe it's been exacerbated by COVID stressors with the gun violence that we've seen lately. And I think that we should address it with urgency.
Appreciate that response, and just wanted to focus a little more short term. I know you were involved 7 years or so ago in conversations about the Cure Violence model, and that's being talked about in our community, and wonder if you've been involved in those conversations, where you're at on that, whether that's something that the health department could get involved in as kind of a COVID stressor relief kind of measure.
Yeah, so we have been involved somewhat with those conversations, and Cure Violence is one of a number of interventions that have evidence supporting them. I think it's one of a number of ways that we can, as a community, go about taking some innovative approaches to violence. I think sustainability is the key, and making sure that whatever we do isn't just a one-off at this time, but making sure that we create a system that addresses it for the long haul. So I am supportive of something being done. I'm not sure if Cure Violence is the prescription for what best fits Grand Rapids, but something needs to be done in addition to what is currently happening.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns for Director London? Commissioner Steck.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick follow-up with that, with respect to the Cure Violence conversation. Is that a conversation analysis that's being pursued in your department, or is Wayman doing that, or is that taking place someplace else?
And so I've been in a few conversations about it, but it's not a program review that's happening actively within the health department right now. Wayman would need to speak to that from administration's perspective.
Commissioner, we have actually entertained a number of inquiries and potential proposals. And so administration, the legal team, and administrative staff are involved with entertaining these. And we're hoping to have something back from some of the potential proposers here soon, but we're working through that right now and have been for a couple of weeks now.
Okay. Thank you for that, Wayman.
I'd also like to say that we will be addressing that later on down in the agenda, Commissioner Talon, just as a heads up. So appreciate your concern on those issues, and glad we were able to get Dr. London's perspective, but just wanted to let you know we will be addressing that down the line here. Any other questions, comments, concerns for Dr. London? I just want to encourage our health department. This is a health pandemic. These funds are primarily for health concerns. So if we need an additional mobile unit on top of the additional mobile unit we're looking at, I would just suggest that we make sure that any and all, anything we need is included, and we want to be sure that we're supporting those efforts. So just to encourage us to get creative. On that note, I don't see any other hands. Thank you so much, Dr. London, for taking the time today. Really appreciate all you're doing. Please share all of our thanks and appreciation to the staff at the health department, and have a great day. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we're going to move on to item 5 of the CARES Act reporting requirements and timeline. This is a quick one, but just thought it'd be good for the subcommittee to hear from Jeff on some of the federal timelines and deadlines we have for this fund.
Yep, I will be very brief. So there's 6 reporting cycles as part of the CARES Act funding. The first one was this past Monday, and that was reporting through June. The next one's due October 13th, and that's for the next quarter. And basically it's every quarter after that until September 30th, 21, actually. There's 3 reporting periods next year. And that's to wrap up all the expenses, like for the single audit and those kinds of things that will result as a receiving the monies directly. So, and that's my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Try to make up some time here.
Appreciate that. Any questions or comments for Jeff today on timeline, submission, concerns?
Chair.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you. Just clarification, you have talked about a some kind of an estimate or something that was going to be due this fall on how we would be spending the dollars. Is that something that still needs to be done, or where is that in the mix?
Yeah, it was part of our submission that was due on the 21st, this past Monday, and we did submit that data. And we also submitted the report required for the state of Michigan to accept their CARES dollars in lieu of revenue sharing. So I think we're in really good shape on reporting.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, comments for Jeff before we move on? I don't see any. Great, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for staying on top of everything. All right, we're going to move on to item 6, nonprofit United Way update. I know Linda and Matt from Warner have been working tirelessly on this as well, but I'm not sure if there are any others I need to call on. Linda?
Matt's going to take the lead on the report because I was working on some other things. So Matt, if you want to give him the update on United Way, please.
Welcome, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Bolter. The United Way program is in full swing and anticipates that they will be concluding their work sometime in mid-October in terms of awarding grants. They have awards out right now for $6.1 million. And they anticipate some additional requests this coming week based on the expansion of the program to address certain homelessness related issues that we discussed, I believe, at the last meeting last week. At this point, they are confident that they can get the funds out. They had some concerns that if we went too much further with regard to too much longer with regard to this program, that the recipients may have trouble actually spending the funds in time, but are confident that with the current level of funding that they can get the funds out. We're seeing a rather steady, about 7 grants per week that are getting approved right now. We haven't seen a significant either ramp up or ramp down on that. Although I think overall the total amount of funds that has been going out the last couple of weeks has gone down. We would expect that it's going to be going up for the last couple of weeks because of the additional funding for certain sheltering and homelessness services related entities. But at this point, we think the program is going well, and I would be happy to answer any questions about the nonprofit grant program.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt. You said that grants have been approved, but have any checks gone out?
Yes, we have $3.6 million of checks have been paid. An additional million or so in grant agreements are out there. We're waiting for the grant agreements to be returned, and some of those just went out within the last couple of days. We're actually following up today on a few more of them, and then of the remainder, 1.2 million are in process, waiting for some feedback from organizations. and about 270,000 came through from last week, and those are just being prepared. So that's the overall breakdown of that 6.1 million. But to go back, Commissioner Talon, the short answer is yes. A significant amount, 3.6 million in checks have been cashed already.
Good news. Thank you.
Any follow-up, Commissioner Talon? Are you good?
I'm good. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Commissioner Bolter. Just a very quick question for this, along with the business grants. If an applicant is accepted based on what they submit, is it fair to say that, assuming they do stick with what's submitted and that's how they spent the money, if there's an audit, they are legally compliant with the CARES Act spending requirements?
Yes, Commissioner. Yes, Commissioner Jones. Our review of the requests before we write the grant agreements is to ensure that the requests are for permissible, eligible expenses, and therefore, if they do spend the money on the things that they propose, we believe they'll be fully compliant and we won't have any issues.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, concerns for the nonprofit line with Linda, Matt, anyone? Sounds like we're all pretty satisfied with the way that's going. All right. Matt, I want to extend, and Linda, appreciation to you both for keeping track of this. I know it hasn't been super easy, so appreciate that you were able to provide us that detail, and really look forward to hearing any feedback you get from the nonprofit community. Please share it with us as well. So we'd love to hear from them and hear how that's working in our community. So thank you guys both for that, all your work on that. All right, we're on to item 7, Wi-Fi hotspots. I know Tim Roz is here with us today from the right place. Tim, are you up and running? How are you today?
I am. I'm doing well. Good morning, Madam Chair. So I believe I sent a tracking document to you folks that we can share right now. One of the things I'm happy to report is that tracking document is already out of date. So I will put it up here for you guys as far as we can. But I want to go over some quick numbers with you very quickly. Oh, it left. That's okay. We'll get it back. It's okay. So if you guys want to take some notes on some numbers, 28, as of this morning, 28 of 35 local units of government throughout Kent County have already been contacted. That gets us to about 80% total contacted, and that we've at least had conversations with local city managers or township supervisors to get their engagement and make sure they're informed about this. Of those 28, 20 of them have already agreed to participate and are currently working through various approvals. One of the things that's going to be a challenge for us is in many cases, these have to go through their individual commissions or trustee boards to get approvals on. So that delays the process. As much as I would like a signature tomorrow, like we operate in the business world, they have to go through the public process of those. So 6 communities have declined to participate. You see those 6 there in red. They've declined for various reasons. Some of them have honestly just said, you know, we're already covered via our school districts and our libraries, so we're good. We really don't want to take this on. But 6 have declined. We've already had commitments for over 50 units, individual access units. I do expect that number over the next, based on the conversations that I've had over the next 2 weeks, to go up to about 70. So it is continuing to increase. As we get signed agreements and handing those off to DH Wireless, our contractor, to fulfill those contracts. Next up on my list to contact, I had a conversation with the city of Rockford this morning. They confirmed need to reach out to the city of Lowell. Their city manager is currently on vacation, so I'm trying to figure out something there. The city of Wyoming, city of Cedar Springs, and then it's on to the villages. So I will follow up with those folks. This conversation also came up at the recent urban mayors and managers meeting that was hosted on the 23rd, which is yesterday. And they did have some questions for me, but that was a good opportunity to at least get with all 6 cities of the urban core and talk about that project. They did have some questions and some concerns that I will follow up individually with folks, particularly Craig Paul regarding agreements. So with that, I will turn it over if anybody has any questions.
I just had a question. I have two questions for you, Tim. For Caledonia, what does the highlighted number of units mean?
That is that's a to do for me. They did sign the agreement. I didn't get the full agreement back, so I didn't see the unit number in that agreement.
Okay. And then we've had a conversation on, concerns. I'm concerned that the ones that are declining are also potentially the areas where broadband is not widely available. Are there concerns because they would then have to carry out the monthly service fee beyond December? I've been to township meetings and so proud of them that, they are very hawkish with tax dollars. And I've been in a township meeting where they debated a $25 drain pipe for, half an hour. So a $40 service fee per month obligation may be a concern. Are you finding that that's an impediment to some of these smaller, units of government?
Madam Chair, you are correct. When I presented up to Sparta Township, one of the questions I received was how much would the electric bill be every year for the or every month for these units once they're plugged in. So yes, they are very hawkish over their funds. To be honest, those 6 that have declined, those were six declines that were already processed before I was on the project, so I can follow up and see why they declined. But when I started the project 2 weeks ago, they had already responded back and said that they weren't. I'm not sure if Mary Beth is on the line this morning or not. If she is, she can pipe in and maybe provide some insight on that.
Yeah, and I would ask if you would circle back. I would also ask this subcommittee, and I will be formally asking the board to consider the county continuing to pay these service fees out of our general fund. I think when you add them up, it's roughly $100,000 per year. And if we could continue to provide that service as a county service, I will. It is my intention to request that within our budget. So I am concerned and do want to know if that is the reason for decline. Just want to make sure that we can serve these residents up in all corners of the county. So with that, Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Tim. Love the spreadsheet. The couple of quick questions. So and maybe it's further down the spreadsheet, but I don't see the school districts. Are we depending on the cities to contact school districts? Are we considering school districts and school sites as potential placement for the Wi-Fi units?
As far as I was informed, Commissioner Skaggs, I was only informed to contact local units of government. If you want me to reach out to school districts, I can do that too. I don't have those relationships, but I'd be happy to start cold calling if you needed me to.
I know I, for one, would think that, given that part of the reason for us doing this is to ensure that children who might be going to school remotely had access to Wi-Fi, that I think it would be appropriate to reach out to them. See what the chair thinks, but I think that that's a vital place to have these, and also a place frequently that has really big parking lots. If we are again talking about people driving, or many people driving and staying in their car to access these spots. Secondly, I also don't see KDL or the city libraries on there. So is that, especially KDL, is that a place that we're looking at? Or are we expecting the city of Grand Rapids to reach out to their own libraries?
In my conversations with local units of government, they are already well aware of the internet access provided by KDL, and in most cases, KDL does extend via antenna outside of their libraries into their parking lots the ability to connect to the KDL wireless system. So,
okay. And then lastly, I know that we've talked offline, but if you're looking, are you feeling right now, based on the feedback that you're getting and the units that we can purchase for the $1 million that's in this line item? Do you feel like you have enough money for this? 2 million?
I was told it was 1 million. Did someone say 2 million? Oh.
Mandy, I'm sorry, Chair, you're muted.
Sorry, you're correct, 1 million.
Okay. So with the 1 million, are we on schedule to A, spend it all, and B, do we need anything more to roll this out fully?
To answer your question, I don't think we will be able to spend all that money. You know, in terms of the requested number of units that I've seen come through, we might get close, but I don't think we're going to get that, you know, get that far. That's in terms of units. I haven't done the math in terms of the service as well, so I can do that math and get back to you. I apologize.
Okay. Well, Chair Bolter, I'm excited about your notion of helping out our local units of government and the residents of Kent County by looking to see if we have room for this in our future budgets. I think it would be money well spent. And I just wonder if there is a way to have at least some sense of where we're at over the next month, so that Tim could maybe go back to those people that declined, or maybe just go back to everyone, at least in an email, because maybe they would add a unit or two if they didn't think that that they would be putting an additional burden on their budget, and it was something that we could accomplish. Maybe we could get a good deal with a provider as well. So I think, you know, again, knowing that we have our December 31 deadline, maybe that'd be helpful to see if that could become a reality, so that we could inform these folks as they consider whether they want the hardware. Thank you.
Any other questions for Tim? I don't see any other hands. Tim, I'm concerned about spending the money as well, and concerned that we could potentially purchase the unit, the actual equipment, and then continue to install with general fund or other funds if it goes beyond January. Is that correct? Or maybe that's a legal question.
Yeah, that's a great, Commissioner, Madam Chair. And I did loop back with County Council, and I believe, I'm not sure whether it was Craig or who told me this, but I believe I was told there is a provision in the CARES Act rulings that say that you cannot stockpile equipment, and that was determined that would be quote unquote stockpiling if we were to order 100 of these and just keep them in stock.
Okay.
We can have that follow-up question. I mean, that was my original, one of my original ideas was, let's just get these things ordered and get them in. But it sounds like that may be against the CARES Act provision.
Okay. All right. We'll continue to press on. Thank you so much, Tim. Any other questions, comments before we let Tim go? I appreciate all your work. Appreciate you taking this on. I know it's not a small task, and it is hugely important, though, especially in this time. So want you to really appreciate that your work is very purposeful, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. All right, we are on to item 8, Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce update, 5 minutes. Dante, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. And good morning to all. I'm happy to report that we have received just under 3,000 applications to date. And as of Monday, we have about $15 million in approvals, a little over $15 million in approvals that represents about $13.7 million in checks that has actually gone out. We still have about 4 million in the pipeline, applications that are in the process of being completed, that we're working on with the applicants to submit all the required documentation, and that are in the process of going through the reviews. We're estimating about a little over $6 million yet available that we will continue to market to all of our zip codes within Kent County and all of our industries and underrepresented communities to get those dollars out. Probably we're estimating by probably the end of October. We do have some demographics that I'd like to share. About 42% of all applicants or awardees have been women-owned businesses. 2.4% have been veteran-owned. And then the ethnic demographic makeup, Caucasian white is the largest group at 35% of all recipients. African American or Black, 27%. Hispanic / Latino, 12%. Asian, 10%. Multiracial, identifying more than one ethnicity, is 8%. 7% are no answer. Middle Eastern, 1.3%, and Native American, 0.17%. As far as the sectors that are represented by the recipients, services are still the largest group at 48%. Other, 19%. Food and beverage, 15.7%. Retail is at 12%. Childcare, 3.1%. And manufacturing at 2.3%. Total employees represented by the businesses being awarded, 12,598. We are in the process of bringing online the additional funding that has been approved. We should see it online probably on Friday or tomorrow, if not Monday. So we're ready to kick that into high gear. With my remaining time, I'd like to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Dante, can you give us a quick update? I know we just approved this morning, but in preparation for today's approval of the additional 5 million for the extended closed, I don't know what we're calling it, businesses, are we kind of lining that up, and can you give us a quick brief update on where we're at with that?
Absolutely. So we already ran a list of those industries that are impacted that have applied already. So we're ready to tomorrow to connect with those and not ask them to reapply, but update the application so that those can be ready to be reviewed and begin that process. And then we've identified and are ready to implement a marketing strategy for those who have not applied yet under those industries that will be launched tomorrow, I believe. And the application, there's a modification to the online application to include these industries or this new fund that goes live tomorrow. So we are ready to go in anticipation.
Awesome. I had no doubt, but just wanted you to let us know. Yeah. Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Yeah, I wanted to follow up as well, Dante, on the new funding that we've just approved. Are the funding criteria the same from your perspective as it was for the Small Business Recovery Program? And are the funding allotments, the amounts that we would potentially approve, is that the same or is that different? And if so, how?
So it is somewhat aligned, but it is different both on that criteria and the allotment. So as you recall, this additional funding is for profit, but also includes nonprofits that are in the industries that have been impacted by the executive orders and have remained closed as of August 1st. So that's one differentiator. The other one is the employee count. In the original fund, we had a 25 full-time equivalent cap. In this other one, we do not have a cap, knowing that these industries with zero revenue for 6 months they're being impacted drastically. And then as far as the allotments, they begin at $10,000. They go from $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and $40,000. For those that have been funded already that are still closed because of the executive orders, if under the new program, let's say they're funded for $40,000, they're eligible for $40,000 in funding, but they already received $20,000. We would only be awarding the balance of the additional $20,000 that they would be eligible for.
Okay, thank you for that. Of course, the clock runs even more so on this funding. So,
correct. One more thing on the eligibility: it also includes the new funding. Also includes those industries that are not on the executive order, but the primary market that they serve is under the executive order, And the best example is catering. There's a past awardee, and I'll share. It's Applause Catering, who has like 9 vans sitting in a parking lot, and their 86 employees not working still, even though they're allowed to work because the event venues are not operating. So that would include them as well. Those industries that depend on the ones under this classification.
So if you've done the listing already, can you give us how many businesses in Kent County qualify in that?
So we have, yeah, I have my meeting at 11 with my team to review that. So I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I will circle back and provide that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Could we circle back to just a moment on the money that was given to the local chambers to help spread the word? I'd like to have a little more detail at some point on the accountability for what they've done, where they're helping. You know, I do continue to talk regularly to businesses, and I'm still finding a handful that haven't heard of this. So I just would like to make sure there is a quick check back with them on, you know, they were given funding to help spread this word out. I'd just like to have something back. You know, they sent an email to all their membership. They did a mailing. I would just like to know what they did. Can we do that?
Yes. We can make sure that through Dante or either our office, we'll make sure we follow up with them.
Yep. And I do want that we have had some that have been very engaged, that where they've given me an opportunity to present to their membership, or we do virtual clinics and so forth. And some that are very engaged in continuing to send out materials, and then others are not. So we, on our end, we also continue to periodically send out reminders and help them with messaging and so forth, so they can continue to get the word out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns for Dante? I don't see any hands. Again, want to say thank you for all you're doing. I know that I've seen some correspondence come through where there's some very, very desperate businesses and in this community, and I just am so thankful that you're able to do this work and that we're able to provide this fund, and just want to hear any and all feedback and ways we can continue to keep these job providers going and keep these jobs here in Kent County. So with that, I want to send our appreciation to you and your team, and just thanks so much for the update and moving forward.
Thank you,
Dante.
Chair.
All right, we are on to item 9, and I will call on Wayman and I believe Steve.
Yeah, Steve Duarte should be on the line. There was a little problem earlier with some of the captioning. I don't know if that got squared away, so let's make sure that we're sensitive to the communication.
Why don't we take a quick 2-minute break? Would that be okay with everyone? Coffee break, and we'll come right back.
Wayman, is there any way that the item we're going to look at next could be emailed to us?
So Pam, I believe you have that. I sent it to you earlier. Could you?
Oh, she did? Okay.
No. I said Pam has it. So we can push that out to the committee members right now. Pam, if you could do that, and then we can put that on the screen as well.
Yeah, which
one?
though?
That's the one from Steve, the one that Mandy and you and Mandy, Steve and I finalized this morning.
The buckets.
The buckets.
It's just hard for me to see it on the screen. It's much easier if I can look at the actual document.
That bucket document.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see.
It was in the packet, but you could just email it out.
Well, I thought I did. Like this morning.
That one there. And then Steve is going to have that additional document that we forwarded a little while ago. That he's going to address the reserves.
I think that one's queued up too, and the captioner is not on, so be helpful. Maybe the members could put questions in the chat.
Why don't we do that? Okay. Make sure they know that. You can send a chat note out to them to say that. Why it's chopping it off at the bottom. It's been doing that all day.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a way to change the view.
Give me the high sign, Lyman, when you're ready for me to start.
Sure. We're taking a couple of minutes break. So let me just send you a note there.
Okay, what am I sending? I gotta send something to.
Let them know that if they got questions, send them through chat.
All right, are we back? Is everyone back?
Who never left?
Well, I've had an entire pot of
Mr.
coffee
Tallon and
this
I have
morning,
been
so.
talking since you've been gone.
All right, is closed captioning fixed, or are we gonna go through chat for questions?
We're gonna go through chat for questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so this, just want everyone to be patient. We're gonna run through this and throw questions in the chat for Steve. Wayman may be able to answer some, but for Steve, let's put our questions in chat, or I can read them as well, so we can all hear them.
Sounds good. So Steve,
right.
You can take it away.
Okay. Good morning, commissioners. I've got a couple handouts that I will go over today. The first one will be the buckets report. You've seen this the last 2 or 3 times that we've met on this. I'm going to only hit the highlights. This is a point in time statement for what's went through fiscal services as 9/22 of 2020. County expenses were still at 35 million. For the total allocation, probably the most significant thing I want to point out is again that the various unallocated, the last item within the county expenses is $1.5 million overdrawn for what we originally put in the allocation. We continue to deal with that. Overall, we expect to be able to cover that. And our expectations are we will spend at least the 35 million that we've been allocated, possibly more. Business assistance, you've been updated on that several times. For us, third column, we show about 13.9 million. Of that, about 13.7 million is already out the door as expense. And they continue to assure us that they will spend that money by the end of September or October. Mitigation of homelessness, we continue on with there. We have contracts with all that stuff, not much difference to report there. Vulnerable populations, again, one of our big programs is the not-for-profit United Way, 9.5 million allocated. We show at this point about 6.1 million already committed and or out the door. The internet process, we just discussed, you're aware of that. The local unit of government, we're planning on all that money being spent, and we went through the allocation formula. The only thing of note I should mention is that in the vulnerable populations, mental health, which was originally, at least in my mind, set up for assistance to Network 180, who has derived other resources to cover their need, and other agencies needing dollars for mental health have been run through the United Way program. So we feel that that mental health money can be reallocated, and I will deal with that in the second handout. Before, because this was put in place or created before the board acted today, we still show 18 million as the reserve, and we'll talk a little bit more about those allocations when I go to the second handout. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions if there are any questions on this document.
Any questions for Steve before we move on from what's been allocated and what's been appropriated? Any questions, comments? I don't see any in chat. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. The second document is hopefully clean and straightforward and handles three things. One, it talks about the potential transfer in from the mental health bucket with $1 million. At that point, we would have an unadjusted or adjusted unallocated reserve of 19 million. At the point I created this document, there were 4 commitments that were made against the reserve that had not officially been approved by the board. I know that took place this morning, so we'll make the appropriate adjustment. When you look at that, the projected net reserve dropped to 11.9 million, or just under 12 million. What comes next is the administrative recommendations on perhaps some other commitments that the board wants that may want to consider. Certainly, this is what we were recommending to the board. Convention Arena Authority recommend an allocation of $2 million. That is supported by their request and was reviewed by the committee a little earlier. There's been discussion that's supported by the sheriff and the prosecutor about putting together an allocation for youth violence and crime prevention. At this point, we're recommending $500,000. A reserve of up to 910 for Family Promise to cover the program for hotel vouchers. Now, we are trying to get additional funding from ESG and FEMA. But if we don't, then the request would be for additional CARES funds. So this one says a reserve up to 910, indicating we wouldn't use that unless the other funds didn't materialize. Small business grant loans and technical assistance continuation. We had a brief discussion last week with an amount saying to be determined. At this point, we are recommending $2 million as jobs are businesses are important to jobs, to families. So we've made that recommendation to you. And then based on conversations I've had with the finance director of the health department, they indicated the director would like to see at least $2 million additional funds for programs that he's outlined for you today. If we do all those things, that would take the reserve down to about $4.5 million.
Okay, so I'm sure we all have questions. I want to rattle through a couple items. Convention Arena Authority we heard from today earlier. The Youth Violence Program, and this is Commissioner Talon, especially directed to you from your previous comments and questions earlier in the meeting. We received a lot of emails, I know, from Cure Violence. I know that there are a lot of other groups that are already established here in our community. I did speak with the prosecutor, the sheriff, the mayor, some other folks, and instead of just funding specific programs, what I thought would be helpful is to put this line item together we could add it over into United Way because most of these groups would be nonprofits, but it would be almost an enhancement and an earmark, kind of like we just did with the chamber for the 5 million for just these youth violence and anti-crime programs here in Kent County. And then that way other groups could apply, Cure Violence could apply, other, Center for Transformation, Boys and Girls Club, other groups who may provide this programming could apply. I think we would need to discuss who should be selecting those, which would potentially be a different selection committee than the current nonprofit selection committee, because I think we would want the input of our Grand Rapids police chief and maybe Wyoming and Kentwood and Granville and Walker and various other groups. But this was kind of the intention there to open it up. Family Promise, I think that's self-explanatory. Steve, I assume we would get that money back if we're fronting that and it comes through from other means of grants. Health Department, we heard from Adam London today. The 2 million, I haven't seen a specific proposal on this small business grant and loan. So I guess if someone could give us a little bit more detail on that before we proceed with additional questions.
So I can speak to that briefly. The staff has, based on the comments that we received last subcommittee meeting, and knowing that as the community tries to grow itself back into a better place, there could be other businesses that are closed that don't have the necessary resources to get back up to speed. We are anticipating that that's going to be the case. We don't have specific numbers from anyone. The chamber perhaps could give us more intel on that. The CAA we met with this morning, Rich McKeegan, others. So we're just putting that on the table. We can take it off, but we anticipate there might be more need.
Wayman, you're saying the 2 million would be additional direct grant funds, or it would be additional funds for administrative costs to continue to administer programs?
It could be both, where the chamber, in fact, is being asked to take on more and more to get these dollars out. So part of it could go to them, but also a direct grant to businesses. Yes.
Okay, but we don't have a specific proposal from the chamber. No. This is just a thought that at the pace the money is going out the door for small business, we might want to consider putting an additional 2 million. Okay. Let's go to questions and comments on these 5 additional administrative funding recommendations. It looks like Commissioner Steck has a question regarding if this would be a violent crime, and he put that in the chat.
Or I can follow up to it. You probably addressed some of that in your further explanation, that this would be a set aside subject to further analysis and evaluation about what qualifies, who would qualify, and how we would apply it. So I assume that issue would get fleshed out in the course of that process.
Yes, that's correct. We have some information that we've received from the sheriff and the prosecutor related to the criteria and so forth. So yes, that we would build that in and make sure that it met the criteria.
And then my follow-up question probably would be, it's set at 500,000. A lot of money, but in the spectrum of things, is it a lot of money? Why at 500 and not some other number?
Yeah, some of these organizations are already receiving monies through some of the organizations that could do this work are receiving perhaps dollars through United Way, through the nonprofit program. One of the organizations I know is LifeQuest, for instance. There could be others that are out there that are already receiving money. So we're hoping that the blending of those dollars between the United Way nonprofit with this amount of money could move us into that foray. There's another organization, the YMCA, I think they may have an interest in some of this work. There's some other local nonprofits that the Transformation Center is another nonprofit, the Urban League. They all have opportunity to get funding through the United Way nonprofit portal as well.
Yeah, I think as we're sort of at a point where we're just beginning to become aware of the relationship between the COVID, the mitigation orders, and evolving violence levels. And so certainly this is an issue that's gotten a lot of attention and concern by our communities, by folks out there. So I would suggest we continue to look at it carefully, whether this is the right number.
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, could you just let us know, what you're looking for to accomplish today on this issue? Are we discussing, or is it your hope that we end with a vote? Is it your hope that we pull down that revised projected net reserve to 0? Just let me. I'm curious. Can you just let us know what you're thinking? Where we're going.
So my thought process is I'm trying to balance having an accurate accounting of what we have and what we need through the rest of the year, and also the fact that we need to spend down every last dime before December. I think we still have a little time. It is September, but if we could approve these items under recommendations, I guess I'm throwing that out there because I would like to approve each of these. If we don't feel comfortable approving them because we don't have enough information, happy to table it. If we want to formulate what that is, happy to discuss that today and get that out. I would like to proceed with at least Convention Arena Authority, Youth Violence, the Reserve for Family Promise, and the Health Department. We could potentially table the small business and see where they're at. We just got a report out, so I think they will probably run out of funds. But I would like to get these going because some of these are going to be startup, the youth violence and crime prevention, for instance. We're going to have to put together that selection committee. We're going to have to get the word out to those groups. It's going to take time. So I would like to get that approved today, at least the allocation. So I would like discussion on that, and I would like to vote on that today.
Okay, so if I may then go on to my questions. As I've mentioned before, I think that we've could be more generous towards our students and our schools. I think it's very important that that they have all the tools they need to get our students back in learning, both for the sake of our kids and frankly, I know there are a few young parents here. For the sake of our parents as well, so that we can get people back into the workforce and maybe deal with some of that depression and anxiety. I know that one of our sort of sister counties in Oakland, as I've mentioned, has put forward $28 million for their schools and kids. And although they're double our size, I think that there is room for us. I believe that the county has received a letter from Chris Glass and the KISD showing that there is additional need there as well. So I think that is something that we should consider. So at that point, if the chair is looking for a motion, I would make a motion for what the chair just mentioned, that we go ahead and move for timeliness sake on the Convention and Arena Authority, the Youth Violence Program, Family Promise, and the Health Department, and then hold back on the small business grants, as I think that that in schools is perhaps where there is the last bit of possible for additional funding, and I just want to make sure that we're keeping our schools in mind as we spend this last $6-7 million. So that's my motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Anyone want to second the motion?
This is Stack. I want to make sure I understand the motion before I second it. It is to go ahead and approve the $2 million excuse me, allocation on the Convention Arena Authority, the $500,000 set aside for youth violence, the $910,000 for the Reserve for Family Promise, and the $2 million for the Health Department, and hold back on the small business grant allocation of an additional $2 million.
That is correct.
Okay, I'll support that.
Moved by Commissioner Skaggs, support by Commissioner Steck. It looks like Steve has a comment.
Yeah, one other thing you need to add to your resolution if you want to, is the idea that we need to move the $1 million from the mental health bucket into the reserve so that you can allocate it out as part of your process. So if you add that to it, we will take care of it. The other thing I would like to say is I wouldn't want to take the reserve all the way to zero. My recommendation would be to keep it in the $2 to $2.5 million range. We have some costs that we can incur after the year end with supplement monitoring, single audit costs. We want to be able to keep a little money to handle those, and those can occur after 12/30 because obviously you can't audit till the program's done. So they provided a way to do that.
Okay, so Commissioner Skaggs, do you want to amend your motion?
Amend my motion to what Steve just said about transferring the $1 million from the mental health bucket into the reserve bucket.
Commissioner Steck, do you want to second that?
Yes, and I'll agree to that change in the motion to pull the $1 million back into the reserve.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to move the mental health funding into the reserve and then to approve the $2 million for Convention Arena Authority, $500,000 for youth violence and crime prevention, $910,000 for Family Promise, and $2 million additional for Health Department. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding that motion before we take a quick roll?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Steck.
Sure.
I just want to clear that by not putting the 2 million in the motion, I don't intend to say I wouldn't support that eventually, that at some point as we get forward and get more information, that may be well appropriate and maybe it's too much, maybe not enough, but I'd want to see more with respect to whether really we can push that kind of money back through this system. We're just adding another 5 into the chamber's responsibility. So. And I know that if we put some into the schools, it's very easy to get out. We simply do the formula and send it out. So,
any other questions or comments on the motion? No hands. All right, Pam, can you take a quick roll?
Sure. Commissioner Steck,
yes.
Commissioner Breavy,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Ponstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs,
Yes.
Commissioner Talon,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack, Commissioner Womack, Chair Bolter.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Okay, so I do want to mention we have a couple of items to consider here with these reserves. I did receive a correspondence from Chris Glass, as Commissioner Skaggs mentioned. He did do a survey. There is need. I want staff to go back through that and kind of assess what are they already using. I mean, I have just handed out the initial round to schools, so I want to consider, utilization of that and their continued need, which we can do at our next meeting. We will consider this business proposal, and also would like staff to kind of advise us on whatever money is not spent. I mean, it's my understanding that we still are under the same allowable uses as the direction that was given to the state and other municipalities in terms of, utilizing the funds for some of our county needs and our county resources. So I just want to kind of mention that and make sure that staff's prepared for that next meeting. Before we go to public comment, I do want to talk to the committee and find out our next CARES subcommittee is not scheduled, I don't believe, until the end of October. Is that correct, Pam?
Yes, that's correct. October 22nd, after the board meeting.
Do we want to move that up? Do we want to keep that there? Staff, what do you advise? I mean, if we are considering school funding or, additional small business funding, I'm thinking we might need to move that up.
Yeah, I think that that would be okay with us. If we could move it up a couple of weeks, we could find a time, work with you, Madam Chair, figure out what would work best.
Okay, rest of the board members' thoughts?
Support.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item 10, public comment. Oh,
Chair
Commissioner
Bolter,
Talon?
just
Sure.
one more quick question. The items that we approved today, do they all need to go to the board or just some of them? Do you have any idea on that?
The ones that are over, I believe, $1 million. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just a handful of them.
Linda, could you clarify your volume's down?
The reallocation needs to go through the board process, just straight to the board, not through finance, the way we did this morning at this morning's board meeting.
So that would go to the, what, October 8th board meeting?
The next board meeting is October 8th, yes.
Okay. So a couple weeks yet before, but we probably can tell people it'll likely be approved and be ready to go. I continue to be concerned about getting the dollars out quickly. So just was looking at that time frame.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we move on to public comment?
Yeah, Commissioner Steck?
Sure, yep.
Just a quick question or request for a follow-up with respect to the 500,000. I know that you talked about that having to be a sort of a new methodology for administration and how we get it out. And if we can get some kind of updated report from Wayman relatively soon as to what's the proposal and how they're going to do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I did talk to both the sheriff and the prosecutor. I think that staff can formulate the criteria and selection proposal, and then we could all, look at it and see if we're good with it. We could approve it at the next meeting if you want, or Linda, could we approve it via email or see if there's concerns? But I mean, I mainly was concerned about getting the funding allocated today.
I also have been in touch with both the sheriff and the prosecutor, and we've started putting some of those ideas on paper. So as they develop, we can get that out to you so that at the next subcommittee meeting, everybody's fully informed of the ideas that are on the table.
Okay, and I would like to include outcomes in the criteria as well,
Yes.
Demonstrated outcomes. Okay, great. So we'll get that around and we can approve that at the next meeting. And we have decided to move that up. Do we want to move it up to the next full board meeting day, which would be, what did we say, October 8th?
Yeah.
How do members feel about that?
Madam Chair, this is Steck.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, again, on the timing, if we're going to do it, is there advantage to doing the next meeting just before the board meeting so that if there's something we do want to take to the board, we don't wait another 2 weeks?
We could do that.
What's before that board meeting? Is there anything scheduled?
We don't have anything on the schedule that morning before.
Are you thinking like the board meet, like the day of, but like at 7:30? Or are you thinking?
I never think of it at 7:30.
Or a day before or a different day?
I think the day before it would be my thought, or some days before, just because squeezing us into a 1 hour session is probably not a fair compression. So maybe
What
the
if
day
we did?
before.
What if we did following finance on Tuesday the 6th?
There's a budget work session following that finance committee meeting. We could do before the finance committee meeting at 7:30. It would limit the subcommittee to 1 hour.
What about Wednesday, the 7th? Anytime during that day, Madam Chair?
I have a big conflict that morning. But
It'd probably take about an hour, hour and a half, I would suspect. It wouldn't take a lot.
Yeah, I have a large, long meeting commitment.
Me too.
Yeah, we're on that one at the same time. Monday the 5th.
Monday the 5th, yeah.
Breevy, Steck, Jones, Skaggs, Womack, thoughts?
I can do Monday the 5th.
That's fine.
Commissioner
I'll
Taylor,
make Monday
Commissioner
work.
Womack?
Works for me. I like having a little more time to get the information to the board before the meeting.
Commissioner Jones,
I can make Monday work.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Yes, Monday works for me.
Okay, so it looks like the 5th, do we want to say 8:30 again, 9 o'clock? We'll put
Morning.
something out.
9 o'clock's fine. 8:30 is fine.
Okay, so our next CARES meeting will be Monday the 5th, time to be determined and confirmed. We'll send out a notice. We are moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment in the email inbox? Or any public comment?
Nothing in the inbox, and I don't see hands raised other than Commissioner Skaggs has a hand up. It might just be unintentional.
No, I actually did have my hand up. Then we got into scheduling, but
Sorry.
just going back to what the chair was talking about, criteria for the violence prevention. No, I think we ought to give some weight to looking at whether we're building capacity here locally in Kent County. And are we, what we're doing, I think, with a lot of these funds, whether, intentionally or unintentionally, I think mostly intentionally, is, trying to get us through the pandemic with the disruptions to society and the economy to a minimum, despite the regretful loss of life, that we think about continuing that in this bucket as well, and making sure that the capacity that we're building with these grants is something that will have a long-term effect in the county. And I think that if we want that to be the case, then we need to give weight to whether or not the organizations that are applying for this are from West Michigan. Thanks.
I can concur and support those comments.
Love it when you do that.
All right, any questions, comments, anything else in public comment today? All right, I don't see anything. We are adjourned until Monday, October 5th, time to be determined. Thank you all. We got through this, I think, in under 2 hours, right? Awesome, with a break. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.